Where does the echo of laughter go when it's cut off too soon? The last time anyone saw 17-year-old Alayna Brooks, she was standing at the edge of the mess hall deck, arms folded tightly over her chest like she was holding herself together. The breeze lifted her dark hair in slow motion, and her eyes, sharp, too alert for someone her age, kept flicking toward the woods. Not scared, just knowing, like she could feel something shifting, something invisible that everyone else ignored. It was exactly 7:42 p.m. Dinner had just ended. The camp buzzed with post-meal chatter and clinking plates, staff cleaning up while campers filtered out into the dusky light. Somewhere behind her, a boy dropped his flashlight and laughed. Someone called her name. She didn't turn around. She just whispered something under her breath and stepped down the stairs. And then silence. Not the loud, obvious kind that makes you pause. The kind that slips in unnoticed. The kind you don't realize matters until hours pass. And someone finally asks, "Have you seen Alayna?" Her phone stopped pinging just after 8 o'clock. By midnight, the texts from her mother were stacking up unread. The temperature dropped. A storm was rolling in from the north. You could feel it in the way the trees held their breath. Marie Brooks would later describe the feeling as a pull in her gut, a mother's sixth sense. She says she jolted awake that night without knowing why. Something was wrong in my chest. Not pain. Just wrong, she told the detective. Like her name was being erased somewhere. But this wasn't a case that started with screaming. No shattered window, no frantic phone call. Just a girl slowly walking into the evening with her shoulders hunched, eyes heavy, notebook pressed tight against her ribs. Like whatever she'd written was the only thing keeping her anchored. The camp had a reputation. Not a bad one. Just distant. Tucked deep in the pines. An hour outside the nearest town. No cell service. No Wi-Fi. The kind of place that advertised itself as a digital detox for troubled teens and overwhelmed parents. For Alayna, it wasn't a punishment. She'd asked to go. That's what her mother kept repeating later, voice tight with disbelief. She wanted to go. She needed space. But space doesn't swallow people. Not like this. Her bunkmates assumed she was off sketching near the lake again. The counselors weren't alarmed. She was always quiet, always wandering. The first official head count came nearly 12 hours later. Too late for footprints. Too late for heat signatures. By then, the rain had erased everything but questions. Where had she gone after dinner? Why had Kayla, the counselor assigned to her cabin, signed off early that night, then not shown up the next morning? And what did Tommy Ruiz mean when he said, "She looked at me like she knew something, but couldn't say it out loud"? The story didn't start with a scream. It started with a knowing, a weight in the air, and a girl watching the woods, like they were watching her back. How do you trace a person's truth when all you have are half-written sentences and smudged ink? The morning after Alayna didn't return to her bunk, the cabin was unusually cold. The other girls didn't notice at first. They'd gotten used to her quiet presence. The way she always curled up in the top bunk with her hoodie up, journal open, headphones in, shutting out the rest of the world. But something was different this time. Her bunk looked too neat, like it had been made with intention. The blanket was tucked perfectly, her pillow fluffed, her shoes lined side by side at the base, shoes she always wore to breakfast. And sitting squarely in the center of her mattress, under the weak morning light leaking through the cabin window, was her journal. Open. That was the first thing that cracked Kayla Jensen. Not the missing girl. Not the questions. The journal. Open. Pages fluttering like they were trying to speak. She later told investigators, Alayna never left it out. She carried it everywhere, even to the lake. She said it was the only place she felt safe. Inside were dozens of entries, ink still fresh on the latest ones. Long sentences, obsessive loops, arrows pointing to phrases she'd crossed out again and again. Like she'd been trying to rewrite her own thoughts, afraid someone might read what she really meant. But there were pieces that hit like bruises. They keep telling me I'm safe, but I hear things no one else does. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Kayla doesn't blink when she lies. Last night I saw him again, in the chapel, just standing there. This camp isn't clean. Something's hiding in it. Her mother, Marie, sat hunched over the journal hours later, sobbing without sound. She kept tracing the words with her fingers like she could warm them back to life. She begged the officers not to bag it yet. Said, "Let me read my daughter before you turn her into evidence." Marie remembered every detail from the night before. How she'd texted Alayna something simple before bed. "Good night, baby. Love you." No reply. She told her husband Daniel, "It's nothing. Maybe she's just tired." But it was never just tired with Alayna. Her daughter had a mind that never shut off. Sensitive, layered, always a little too aware of everything around her. The kind of girl who saw the cracks in people and wrote about them. Who kept lists of moments others forgot. The color of the sky when she cried. The sound of gravel under Kayla's boots. The exact words a boy used when he told her she was weird, but pretty. Alayna didn't just see things. She felt them, deeply. And the camp had made her uncomfortable almost immediately. Marie remembered that, too. The way her daughter hugged her tighter than usual on drop-off day. How she lingered. Whispered something about the cabin's smell. The way the floor creaked like someone was always walking nearby. She was so sensitive to things like that, Marie said later. She always knew when something was wrong. But no one listened. Not the counselors. Not the director. Not even Daniel at first, who'd told her she was overreacting. Now he was the one pacing the police station hallway. Fists clenched, jaw tight. Asking over and over, why didn't anyone listen to her? In town, Sheriff Wanda Keene was getting phone calls from donors and local officials telling her to keep things quiet until more information came in. She nodded, took notes. But when she read the journal that night, she didn't sleep. Because on the final page, in small, slanted letters, almost like a signature, was the sentence that would unravel everything. If I don't come back, start with the chapel. No one knew what she meant. Not yet, but they would. Because Alayna hadn't run away. She hadn't wandered off. She'd left a breadcrumb trail, silent, intentional, and trusted someone to follow it. How do you warn people about something they refuse to see? By the third day, the air around Camp Ridgetree felt heavier. Not just because of the thunder that kept rolling in the distance, but because of the way people started lowering their voices, moving slower, avoiding eye contact when Alayna's name was mentioned. The search had begun, but not the kind you see on TV with helicopters and scent dogs. This was quieter, restricted, the kind of search that made her mother feel like they were pretending. And at the center of it all, Kayla Jensen, the counselor who'd been assigned to Cabin 6, hadn't been seen since breakfast on day 1. She'd left a note in the logbook, headache, taking a break. But her bunk was untouched, her clothes still in her drawer, and her phone turned off. And yet, the camp director, Pastor Jim Doyle, assured everyone she'd simply gone home to rest. Detective Leo McAllister didn't buy it. He'd just arrived that morning, sent in from 2 counties over after the Brooks family refused to be silenced. He was a tall man, quiet, not prone to wasting breath. And something about the case had pulled at him from the start. Not just the missing girl, but the way people talked about her. She was too sensitive. She made things up. She had nightmares. And worst of all, she saw things no one else did. Leo had seen that kind of talk before. In small towns. In places where silence kept reputations intact. So, on the third day, he went to her cabin himself. Alone. No deputies. Just him, the creaking floorboards, and a growing sense of dread he couldn't quite name. He stood in the center of her room, taking it in, the organized mess of a teenager who needed order to survive. Books in alphabetical order, notes labeled by date, a tiny lavender pillow pressed against the window ledge where she liked to sit and write. Then he opened the drawer beneath the bed and found the second journal. Not the one everyone had seen. Not the one Marie had cried over. This one was different, smaller, locked. He held it in his hands like it was made of glass. The leather was warm, as if someone had held it recently. But it wasn't the diary that made his hands shake. It was what fell out from between the pages, a photo. Polaroid. Grainy. Faded. but clear enough to see the face. Kayla Jensen, standing barefoot in the chapel hallway. In the middle of the night, her expression blank. Eyes wide. Behind her, something half caught in the frame. Someone, or something, wearing black. But no one had permission to be in the chapel after 10 p.m. No one had keys except Pastor Doyle. Leo tucked the photo into his coat and took a slow breath. He knew grief. He knew the shape of real loss. But this wasn't ordinary. And when he stepped outside, there was a girl waiting on the porch. She wasn't supposed to be there. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, voice low, eyes sharp. "I know you're the detective." Her name was Ivy Lang, 15, camp intern. Bright orange laces on her boots and a burn scar on her wrist that peeked from under her sleeve when she pushed her hair behind her ear. She didn't speak like a teenager. She spoke like someone who'd seen too much. "I knew Alayna," she said. "She used to sit with me after lights out." She wasn't scared of things like the woods. She was scared of who had access to them. Leo knelt slightly. "What are you trying to say?" Ivy looked at the chapel, then whispered, "She told me she smelled smoke in her dreams." Leo blinked. "Smoke?" She said it like it was a memory, said it followed her into daylight. Every time she passed Pastor Doyle, she said she smelled it stronger. "Smoke from where?" Leo asked. But Ivy didn't answer right away. She looked over her shoulder, then leaned in close. "Fire doesn't always come with flames," she said. "Sometimes it wears a collar and shakes your hand." Leo froze. Because her voice wasn't scared. It was resigned, like she'd already accepted what others were too afraid to admit. And then she said something that would haunt him for weeks. Alayna didn't run. She was marked. It hit him like ice. Because just that morning, the sheriff had said something odd when handing him the case file. "You ever feel like you're not solving something, Leo? Like you're just stepping into it?" Now he knew what she meant. This wasn't just a girl who left behind questions. This was a girl who knew the ending before it began. And she'd left it behind, in scents, in symbols, in whispers from people too broken to scream. What if the signs were never meant to be found after? But before, by day 4, Marie Brooks had stopped crying. Not because the grief had faded, but because something colder, more focused had taken its place. A kind of quiet rage. A mother's refusal to be handled, pitted, or prayed away. She sat in the sheriff's station, eyes bloodshot, hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she hadn't sipped in hours. On the desk in front of her were maps, hand-drawn by her daughter. Each page of Alayna's private journal, carefully photographed and enlarged, had been spread out across the table like puzzle pieces. But it wasn't until Marie noticed the faint circles in the corners of each drawing that she leaned in. There were patterns. Tiny, repeating patterns that matched the camp's layout, only inverted. Trees, cabins, lake trails, but mirrored. And then the chapel. Always the chapel at the center. Marie pressed her hand over the image and whispered like she was speaking to her child through the pages. "You were trying to show me something, weren't you?" Detective McAllister stood nearby, arms folded, watching her. He'd seen grief before. He'd seen denial. But this was something else. He walked to her side and lowered his voice. "I think she was tracking movement." Marie blinked. "What?" He pointed to the arrows on the map, small, nearly invisible to the naked eye, carved faintly between trees and cabins. They weren't random. They followed a rhythm, a loop. "She was documenting something," he said. "A route someone took, over and over. Same time, same places." Whose route? Leo didn't answer, because deep down he already had a name. Pastor Doyle had long been the pride of Ridgetree. Kind, soft-spoken, always the first to show up when a kid scraped their knee or got homesick. The parents trusted him. The board funded him. The counselors obeyed him. But Alayna had studied him. Marie remembered the first call her daughter made just 2 days into camp. Her voice was low, almost embarrassed. "Mom, he watches when no one's looking." Marie had dismissed it, not because she didn't trust her daughter, but because she couldn't imagine a world where the protector was the threat. Now she couldn't stop seeing it. And then there was the notebook page. The one that made her skin crawl. Titled in pencil, barely legible. Chapel, Things They Don't See. Beneath it, 5 bullet points. 11:02 p.m. Door unlocks without a key. Kayla enters, doesn't knock. Loud humming, not electrical. He prays alone, eyes open. Smells like ashes. Marie stopped breathing at that last line. Ashes. The same thing her daughter had written to Ivy Lang. But it wasn't a metaphor. Alayna didn't write poetry. She wrote patterns. She wrote evidence. Detective McAllister closed the journal and turned to the sheriff. I need the security feed from the chapel's hallway. All of it. Before it's wiped. But Sheriff Keene looked down, ashamed. It's already been overwritten. Leo stepped back, jaw clenched. By who? I don't know. They said the system auto-deletes after 48 hours. Marie stared at them both, her voice suddenly cutting through the room. She knew. My daughter knew something no one else wanted to see. And she didn't run from it. She tried to record it. She picked up the photo Leo had shown her. The one with Kayla barefoot in the chapel, that shadow behind her too real to be ignored. She tapped it hard. She wasn't scared for herself. She was scared no one would believe her. Then her voice broke, soft, almost childlike. She needed me to believe her. That night, Marie sat in her car outside the chapel. She didn't tell anyone, didn't call Daniel, didn't even leave the engine on. She just waited. At exactly 11:02 p.m., the chapel door opened. No footsteps, no voices, just a soft creak, a figure stepping out. And for the briefest second, Marie thought she saw movement behind them, not a second person, but something in the air. A heat, a ripple, like smoke without fire. She didn't go inside. Not yet, because if her daughter had left behind a trail, Marie Brooks would follow it all the way to the end. Even if it burned. What if the truth wasn't hidden? Just ignored. Detective Leo McAllister didn't sleep that night. He sat hunched over a borrowed laptop in the back corner of the sheriff's office, listening to the faint hum of the overhead light and the buzz of a dying vending machine. His coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, but he didn't notice. The camp had reluctantly handed over 3 days' worth of footage from the mess hall security camera, the only camera not tied into the auto-wipe system the chapel claimed to use. And it was grainy, time-stamped, unfocused in some places. But it was something. He clicked back to the night of the 22nd. The last evening anyone physically saw Alayna. 7:41 p.m. There she was, alone, standing near the mess hall door with her hands shoved into her hoodie, hair braided loosely over one shoulder, face unreadable. She wasn't talking to anyone, wasn't looking around. She just stood listening to what he couldn't tell. And then, 7:42 and 16 seconds p.m. She turned her head slightly, not like she'd heard a voice, but like she'd felt something shift behind her. Then she moved, deliberate, slow, toward the eastern path, the one that led past the chapel, toward the older cabins no longer in use. Leo paused the screen, backtracked, watched again. No one had called her name. No counselor waved her over. There was no trigger. She'd simply turned, like she'd already decided to follow something. He felt a chill spread across his shoulders, even in the warmth of the office. He clicked forward, minute by minute. Nothing else. No one followed. No one came looking. But at 7:59 p.m., something strange happened. The camera glitched. Only for 2 seconds. Just a flicker. But when the feed returned, the scene had shifted, slightly. 2 chairs had moved. The back door stood slightly ajar. And in the far right corner of the frame, someone had entered. Not Alayna. Not staff. It was a tall male figure wearing black. No badge. No camp shirt. Head down. Moving quickly. The system didn't record audio, but the tension on screen was deafening. And then, gone. Whoever it was had left through the back before the next frame could catch a full face. Leo scrubbed forward. Again and again. Until 9:12 p.m., when Kayla entered the mess hall, breathless. Alone. Looking over her shoulder. She went to the fridge, opened a bottle of water, spilled half of it trying to drink. Her hands shook. She didn't clean it up. Instead, she walked directly toward the Eastern Trail, the same one Alayna had taken. Leo leaned back, staring at the screen like it might answer him. Two girls, two paths, same destination. One of them left a map behind. The other left without explanation. But both had gone toward the chapel trail. He printed the frame and circled the timestamp. His heart thudded. This wasn't just a disappearance. This was movement, coordinated, tracked. And then the moment he couldn't explain, 12:03 a.m., the mess hall lights flickered. Not once, for times. The cameras caught it. Electrical, maybe, or not, because on the final flicker, when the lights flashed off and back on, something was sitting in Alayna's usual seat. A notebook, closed, placed carefully. But Alayna never came back that night, and no one admitted to placing it there. Leo pushed his chair back from the table. That's when the sheriff walked in, holding something wrapped in plastic. Mail just came. This was addressed to your name, care of the station. Leo raised a brow. Who even knew I was working this case? No return address, she said. It was dropped off by hand. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph, printed on glossy paper. The same map Alayna had drawn. Only this time the chapel was marked in red. And beneath it, in her handwriting, "If they won't stop him, you will." Leo stared at the paper, hand trembling, because he suddenly understood what she had done. She hadn't just been keeping notes. She hadn't just been afraid. She had witnessed something, and left a breadcrumb trail for someone she'd never met. Because deep down, that 17-year-old girl believed the world would not save her in time. So she mapped her own way out, and prayed someone would follow. What do you do with the pieces someone left behind, when they say everything except what hurts the most? By the 6th day, the Brooks family had moved into a motel just outside the camp's perimeter. They didn't want to go home. Home was too quiet, too far, and their daughter's scent still lingered in her room. Lavender, graphite, and the faint smell of sunscreen she always wore, even on cloudy days. Marie kept her pillow in the front seat of the car. Daniel didn't ask why. She spent most nights holding it, as if her daughter's dreams might still be trapped inside. Detective Leo McAllister returned that evening, holding something in his hand he hadn't expected to find. Alayna's second diary. Not the one from her cabin. Not the locked one under the bed. This was smaller, handmade, leather stitched at the spine, tucked deep in the floorboards of the old rec center, discovered behind a loose panel during a building inspection. She'd hidden it in a place only someone desperate would think to reach. And the pages inside weren't dates or daily entries. They were letters, to her mother, to her father, to someone unnamed, each one more raw than the last. Dear Mom, I don't want you to think I'm scared. I just think I'm seeing things others refuse to see. They smile too easily, like they're pretending for each other. Dad, you'd probably say I'm imagining things again. I know how I sound, but this doesn't feel like imagination. It feels like being trapped inside someone else's lie. To whoever finds this, if you're reading, you already know they're not telling the truth. Don't let them call me unstable. I'm not confused. I've been watching, and I know what happens next. Marie couldn't finish reading. Her hands began to shake. Daniel took the journal, lips pressed tightly together. He read silently. His eyes didn't blink for several pages. And when he looked up, his voice cracked. She knew. Leo nodded slowly. She saw it before it unfolded. She tracked it, documented it, and she trusted someone would care enough to put the pieces together. The sheriff entered the room then, holding a box labeled Chapel Maintenance Archives. It had been recovered from a basement storage room. Unmarked, forgotten. Inside were keys, old floor plans, and maintenance logs. One entry, dated 3 weeks before Alayna arrived, caught Leo's eye. East wing door unlatched again. Staff reports unauthorized movement during night shift. Surveillance issue still unresolved. Chaplain insists nothing unusual. Consider replacing locks. It was signed with initials. KJ. Kayla Jensen. Marie stepped back. Wait, she reported something? Before all this, Leo looked down. Seems like it. And then another page. Folded. Unattached. It wasn't part of the log. It was written in handwriting that didn't match Kayla's. Soft, clean cursive. Alayna's. He doesn't use keys. He doesn't need them. The lights go off and then he's just there. I stopped counting how many times, but I marked each one on the back wall of the chapel. I don't think I'll be here long enough for someone to notice. The room went silent. Marie looked at the detective, voice hoarse. You have to go there. Tonight. Not with a team. Not with flashlights and tape. Just you. She trusted you. Leo nodded. And at 11:17 p.m., he entered the chapel alone. No creaks. No voices. Just the sound of a single moth hitting the ceiling light. He walked past the pulpit, past the locked sacristy door to the far back wall. And there, barely visible under the pale glow of the emergency light, were scratches. Small, straight, in rows, 13 of them, each one marked with a time and a date. He ran his fingers across the last one. July 22nd, 7:42 p.m. It wasn't a symbol. It was a record. The last known moment someone watched her walk away. And behind that moment, silence that no one dared to name. Until now. Because Alayna Brooks didn't beg to be remembered. She forced it. In maps. In margins. In walls that didn't hold her voice. And every heartbeat in that chapel told Leo one thing. This wasn't over. Not until the last mark on the wall was answered. How do you tell the world a child uncovered evil before anyone believed it was there? Detective Leo McAllister stood alone inside the chapel just before sunrise. The wooden floors groaned under his steps, and the cold that hung in the air wasn't from outside. It felt like something internal, buried, old. He was no longer here to find Alayna. He was here to finish what she started. The 13 scratch marks on the back wall weren't just symbols. They were timestamps, logs of moments Alayna had witnessed something. Presence. Pattern. Something no one had dared to name because to name it meant acknowledging it was real. He followed her last mark, July 22nd, 7:42 p.m. The exact moment she turned toward the trail, away from the mess hall, and walked toward this chapel for the last time anyone saw her. That mark was deeper than the others, almost carved through the wood. Something in her had known. Leo ran his fingers across the grooves, then pulled out the small tool he kept in his coat. A compact folding knife, barely longer than a finger. He tapped on the wood once. Hollow. He cut slowly. The panel came loose with a soft crack, revealing a crawl space no one had logged, no one had documented. It smelled of mildew and old stone, something long forgotten or deliberately ignored. Inside, under a thin layer of dust, was a thread. Red. A single red thread, stretching toward the dark like it had been placed there intentionally. Leo followed it slowly, crouched, breath unsteady. 10 feet in, he saw it. A satchel, hand-stitched, Alayna's initials sewn in the corner. Inside were a digital recorder, a USB drive, 2 photos taped back to back, and a final, folded note. Leo's hands trembled. He pressed play on the recorder. First, static. Then her voice. If someone's hearing this, then I didn't run. I didn't leave on my own. Please tell my mom I knew she believed me. Tell my dad I remember the way he hugged me at the airport. I'm not scared anymore. Just tired. I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but I needed to leave this. For someone. Anyone. Because I know what I saw. And he's not who he says he is. She inhaled deeply. Shaky. Pastor Doyle has keys he never signed for. Kayla was scared of him. I think that's why she stopped talking to me. I think she saw more than she could handle. I don't blame her. Then silence again. One last click. And her voice, barely a whisper. They'll call me dramatic. Or emotional. But you saw the scratches. You saw the lights. You heard my voice. Please, don't let it end in the dark. The recorder shut off. Leo didn't move for several minutes. He sat in the crawl space, knees bent, heart pounding with the weight of a 17-year-old girl's final attempt to be heard. Later that morning, he turned everything over to the sheriff's office. The photos were damning. One showed Pastor Doyle entering the chapel at night, alone, eyes trained on the camera with the kind of confidence that came from believing no one would ever question him. Kayla's silence was no longer silence. It was terror. And Alayna was no longer just a name on a flyer. She was the girl who documented her own truth before they could erase it. The press got the story 2 days later. The chapel was closed. Pastor Doyle stepped down quietly, citing exhaustion. An internal investigation was launched. But those who'd read the diary, listened to her voice, seen the scratches on the wall, they knew. She had solved her own case. And she'd done it in real time, with the clock ticking, with nobody but herself. Marie stood in the chapel that week, looking at the back wall. The sheriff offered to have it sanded, cleaned. She refused. "They stay," she said. "Every mark stays." A week later, someone left a single lavender flower on the chapel's front step. No note, no fanfare, just quiet. And then, 2 weeks after the news broke, the USB drive Alayna left was uploaded in full. Audio, maps, diary entries, time-stamped observations, photos, shadows, voices, every moment she recorded. The video ends with a single message in white text on black screen. She mapped the truth so they couldn't bury it. Her name is Alayna Brooks, and she should be here. If you're reading this, if your heart is still pounding, if you believe truth still matters, then let her voice echo longer than their silence ever could. Subscribe to The Veil of Secret, where we tell the stories they tried to erase. Because justice doesn't begin in a courtroom.